celebration. It's really a good time, and sometimes we show that by. So sometimes, some of you, if you've ever been, and I'm going to say it real plain, if you've ever been to a black church, we do things in our whole body sometimes. I know white churches do it too. Sometimes we're a little buttoned up, right? So I'm here to get loose with Brian. And the white guy is with me. So is the Asian lady and the black person. We're all together. We're together. So we have a good time. And we have a good time because we're in celebration of the divine.
Yes.
So often when we come together in spiritual communities, so often when we talk about church, we talk about religion, we talk about God, we are in this spaciousness of an old pattern. And sometimes what that old pattern was threatening. It was about penalties. It was about, what you did or you didn't do it. If you didn't do it, you're going to get in trouble. And that's kind of how humanity started to understand religion. However, we're in 2019. We're literally months away, weeks away from the end of the decade. We're about to move into 2020. That was a movie once upon a time. Still no flying cars. I don't know where the Jetsons are, but they're not here. But were all of these ideas once upon a time. And when it comes to spirituality, as a person who was raised in traditional Christian church and traditional apostolic faith, there was just really a lot that as I got older just didn't make sense. But there was so much there that did. Right? And so it's a lot of times it looks like the way people get excited about a thing, and so that they go really, really hard and they feel like they can't do anything but that because they're so excited about it. But it's a both and idea. It doesn't have to be exclusively this or exclusively that. Because if you look at the traditional religions and the teachings of the world, there are so many people that have received rich inspiration, rich blessings from the Catholic Church, from Islam, from traditional paths, because in some cases their guidance was really focused on the idea that people didn't know what to do. Right? Like, we're living this life, we're in this world, and we don't really know how to navigate it. And so the educated and erudite and intellects of the age, I like that word, I haven't used it in a while. They were the ones that sent down the information to those plebeians and the hardworking, whatever blue-collar people were before we gave them a label, right? And the peasants and the so-called labels that we put on people who weren't learned. But those were some of the people that also were in tune to the earth. Our indigenous cultures have been showing us and teaching us things that we're just waking up to now. And so as we start looking at life and as we come together in community, especially here at Soul Center, at Agape and Enlightened Heart, and all of these communities that have this breadth of a teaching, because there is a lot, we can center in and look at how it impacts our lives. A lot of what we see that's going on in the world can be explained. But unfortunately, the way our society is set up, we don't really investigate anymore. A lot of the way we're functioning right now is because somebody told it to us, we figured it was okay, we believed it, and we kept moving. And that also strips away a certain amount of devotion and discipline that can come when we actually do the investigating and the testing of ideas ourselves, right?
Yes.
So when you were a kid, when you were an infant, you were touching everything, tasting everything, because as an infant, you're trying to get information about this new world that you're experiencing. And of course, everybody's trying to take everything out of your mouth because it doesn't go there. Right? And so one of the side effects of that is, I read an article this week, well, about 2 weeks ago, and it talked about the idea that sometimes we're so overprotective of children that that there are unintended consequences. And so they said that children in this article who grew up in poorer communities where there was more dirt, where there was more dust, where they were crawling around on the ground, the side effect from that was that they built up healthier immune systems, that they developed the antibodies in their body so that they can start dealing with things better. We live in a very sanitized world, and there are unintended consequences that come with a sanitized world because we are also not developing those antibodies because we're so protected. Also, we are having great challenges with our mental health today. We're having great challenges with our mental health today on some aspect, which is also another unintended consequence. And this is observable. I'm not even talking about something that's a unique idea that I discovered. But if you look around, we're having a harder time than ever dealing with everyday life. Now, there are a lot of reasons for that. One of them is social media, so you're being bombarded more than ever, right? And we're hearing stories about things that we didn't hear about. But what some groups are experiencing are things that other groups have been experiencing all along. So a lot of times we look at the racial dynamics of countries and citizens, or we look at the economic realities of citizens, that people who are very well off have really no idea what it's like to grow up poor. They just have no clue. And there are people who grow up in gated communities, have absolutely no idea what it's like to wait for a bus. It's just not one of the things. How many buses drive through these communities that we're in? Not very many. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the system that they said that they needed in this community. The bus system in Los Angeles doesn't really do really well because for a long time Los Angeles was built as a city for automobiles. But economically, that's not how Los Angeles is set up. But these are just observations, right? So my topic today starts to look at some of the observations that we can make about our own lives and life in the universe itself. My topic is law aligning citizens. Everybody say that. Law aligning citizens, right? And you hear the play on that, right? Because typically you hear what? Law-abiding citizens. So what are we talking about today? What's Spirit bringing to you today? So there are generally two kinds of laws, right? There are many different laws, but there are generally two kinds of laws. Prescriptive laws and descriptive laws. I've talked about this a little bit before a long time ago. Prescriptive laws are the lives, you can look at it very much like a prescription. It's basically telling you what the consequences or what the results will be if this, that, or the other is done. Right? So, if you steal my car, there are laws that are written to say what the consequences are for you stealing my car. I'm not really worried about that today. Then there are other laws that come into existence based upon what the society deems as the rules that they want to abide by. You guys remember, how many of you guys ever called into a radio show back when you used to try to get concert tickets for something? Anybody ever do that? Anybody ever do that a lot? Anybody ever win? Oh, it's a lot of winners in here. I was trying to go. Why you didn't invite me? And so they, when they do the concert tickets, they would give you like the whole spiel. You got to call after this song. You got to name these 3 songs or whatever it was going to be, right? So those are the rules that you had to abide by. And if you had won concert tickets within the last year, you couldn't win again, those types of things, right? So those are the rules that they set up for that. How many of you guys have ever played, let's say, Taboo? It's a game. How many of you guys have ever played Monopoly? It's another. Have you ever played Connect 4? Yeah. All right, everybody ever played Foursquare? So I'm not in a room with people who don't know about rules, right? So we can all relate. And a lot of the rules are set up so that we can optimize our experience, right? So there's nothing like trying to play a game and you don't know the rules. But that was the human experience when we first came into existence. We came into existence not knowing any of the rules. And some of the religions that we were religion misunderstood some of the rules, but they were going with the best information they had. And in some of these religions, they just, like we said earlier, they stopped trying to discover it for themselves. They stopped investigating. The Bible that we have today, the Catholics have a Bible and the Protestants have a Bible. The Catholics have books in their Bible that the Protestants don't have. But they're talking about the same Messiah, and they're talking about the same teachings, but we don't even try to have conversations about reconciling that idea. So you've got millions, hundreds of millions of people with that book and those teachings and different interpretations of it. And believe me when I tell you that for every idea that the Christian religion has given us, like the Trinity, there was a group of people that sat down and said, this is what it is, and this is what we're going to teach, and that's it. Right? That's what they did. And so we can't ignore the idea that they sat down and made decisions for us. We should still be exploring. Ernest Holmes, I was reading this week, talked about one of the greatest hindrances to our faith is simply believing. Because we stop investigating. We stop trying and testing out the ideas and the theories. And that's why I'm called a practitioner. And that's why you, whether you're licensed or not, are practitioners. You are called to practice these teachings. You're called to practice these ideas. You're called to look at the world that you're living in and see if this stuff really works. Respectfully, don't come to Soul Center if you don't think it works. Just don't come. Don't go to Agape. Don't come to the places. Why? Because you are working against your own self. Now here's what you can do. Come to Soul Center if you're willing to consider. Come to Soul Center if maybe kind of sort of you might think it's possible somewhere in the world that there is something that the greatest scientists still don't know. There's still so much science cannot explain that how can you simply wipe out the concept of a force, of something that started it all? Because even as much as they say there was a Big Bang, what was happening the day before? Because there was a day before the Big Bang. You never wondered? That's inquiry. That's belief. That's just accepting things, right? They say, right, that the sun is going to rise every day. They kind of say that, right? The sun rises every day. The sun doesn't even rise. It doesn't. The earth is round. Our language is so flawed when it comes to these concepts and ideas. What if we changed it, and I'm not advocating for this, our language so that it accurately represented the world that we live in? We are called to be law-aligning citizens. So I talked about prescriptive laws, and then there are descriptive laws. So the descriptive laws are like gravity, or like Newton's first law, or like the first law of thermodynamics. People observed that the universe was doing things. They observed that they placed the seed in the ground, and when you left that seed in the ground long enough with water, sunshine, it would sprout. If I did it with eggplants, what do I get? Eggplant. If I do it with an apple tree, what grows? Apple tree. These are things that they observed. So these are laws that are observable. And then there were very wise individuals that started to see that these laws also applied to us. So you start looking at these laws and you start looking at how they unfold and how they work. And so what I'm putting into my children, am I sowing seeds of love, joy, peace, creativity, genius, affirming their power and their authority and their joy? Or am I sowing my anger and my resentment? Am I sowing my limited beliefs and the limited possibilities? Am I sowing limitation? Am I sowing otherness? Am my sewing does not belong. And so you just start thinking about how this works. And you start aligning yourself with it. You start accepting that certain things are or are not. You start examining yourself. So how do we examine ourselves? How do we test it? Well, it's really simple. You're here, so I'm going to tell you. As you look at your life and you look at the life around you, we've come to understand something that we call gravity, right? Everybody generally know what it is? You can test it right now. Everybody just lift your leg up, right? Just lift it up a little bit and then let it go. What happened? Dropped down to the ground, didn't it? We could see gravity everywhere. Newton, we knew it all the time. We just didn't have a name for it, right? And then we use language like gravity defying. And it's not that anything, nothing on earth defies gravity. No matter how cool the magic tricks are, no matter how many times David Copperfield makes us think he's floating, at some point, if you keep watching, before he goes home, he's going to land on the ground. He's not floating back to his multi-million-dollar house in Vegas. He's going to hit the ground. But what happens in reality is this. We align ourselves with the law of gravity. So, birds are doing the same thing. Birds learn that with a certain amount of force, they will counteract the gravitational pull. That's what happens. We design elevators, especially old school elevators. They had levers on them. And so as the lever of the elevator gained more weight, it would counteract and the elevator cage would go up. These are just basic laws that they noticed in the universe, and then creative people made elevators. And then they learned that there was laws of aerodynamics. And we created planes that utilized the laws of aerodynamics to fly. And then there were boats. And there were boats made out of certain things that really aren't called boats because they're now at the bottom of whatever water that they tried to float them on. Because it didn't balance out with the law of buoyancy. So all of these are the descriptive laws of nature. And there are many, 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 many of them. So how do we apply that to our lives? You are a citizen of this universe. So what does it mean to be a citizen, right? When you think of citizen, there's a lot of conflict around that these days in our republic. And we start looking at who is allowed to do what. A citizen basically is one that has all the rights and privileges of a particular authority, right? So sometimes you're a subject or authority or a citizen of the United States or the United Kingdom or France or Germany. And you're subject to the laws of that country, right? Now the object is the country itself, but the subjects are its citizens. But they're all within this one thing, yes?
Yes.
So you're also a citizen of the universe. So it's imperative upon you to come into an awakened awareness of the things that are actually guiding your life. We go through a whole lot in this country to get a driver's license. There's a whole lot that you have to go through. But nobody is out here helping us as parents to figure out how to raise children. And there's a mandate upon the laws that were created that you have to pass these tests and these examinations in order to be able to drive on our roads. And I will submit to you something very strong, is that every murderer, every rapist, every criminal was manufactured by our society. I'm going to say it again. Every murderer, every criminal, every rapist, all of these people that have committed these vile or any sort of crime were nurtured by our society. Oh, how can you say that? Because every child that enters into this world that is in that nursery is perfect. It's not racist. It's not homophobic. It doesn't believe in scarcity. It's not violent. Certainly there is something to be discussed about how the brain is functioning in each one. But there are also now, just imagine how many things 100 years ago were blamed on a defect of the person, right? But now, because psychology and psychiatry, these studies of the human mind, have now let us know how the mind works, and now we can remove the blame off of people. I was watching an episode of a show, and the people had come back from World War I, but it was before we had the phrase PTSD. And the guy was in a bar, and he was like taking a nap, and he woke up at the bar, and he thought he was right back in the middle of World War I, and the line was that the shells had blown the God out of my mind. He just couldn't, there was no understanding of what was happening with his mind. But again, we live in 2019. We have a lot of information about how to care for and raise children. We have a lot of that information, and unfortunately, we have not put any energy to making sure that every parent has that information. I'm sure there are booklets that they kind of hand out, but if you want to change our society, you've got to change and you have to give people what they need so they can raise the best possible child. You have to be able to do that. So, as individuals that are in this awareness of life, you have to awaken to the laws that are governing our world. So let's start with the first, easiest one. Order. The first law, it said, of the universe is order. So what does that mean? Either things work or they don't work, right? So either summer, autumn, winter, fall occurs or it doesn't. And depending on where you are in the earth, you get a longer summer, you get less summer. If you're down by the equator, you have a different environment, different ecology, different system that's happening, right? You can see this. But the way that the order works is that the universe is spinning. If the earth was any closer to the sun, it would burn up all of the plant life, and then humans would not exist here. If it were a little further away from the sun, the earth would be a little frozen ball of water floating in space because it wouldn't get the necessary heat from the sun. So what about you? How close are you to spirit? How far away from you are spirit? This isn't a judgment. All we're doing is observing. You see, the biggest error, one of the biggest errors of the old churches and traditions were that when you did not have something aligned, it was wrong. The word sin is not as heavy as they make it out to be. The word sin comes from an idea that's wrapped in archery, and it's simply, does anybody know?
Miss the mark.
That's right. So if instead of using the word sin, we just told people, Jennifer, you missed the mark. Sharon, you missed the mark. Ted, you missed the mark. That's it. Doesn't that feel different?
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about. If you want, how many of you want an abundant life? Make some noise. How many of you want more joy in your life? Anybody interested in more peace? Right? Anybody interested in more love? So you have to align with peace. So how do you align with peace? Peace is not the absence of conflict. This is why meditation is so important. It's great to meditate when it's quiet. You know when it's even better to meditate? When it's noisy. Not because we're weighing out the judgment, but we're talking about weight. We're talking about going into the gym. So if I'm in the gym and I'm laying on the bench and I don't have a barbell in my hand, but I'm like, ah! People are looking at me crazy, but I'm on the bench, nothing in my hands. Ah! I'm getting a little resistance because, you know, I'm flexing. All my, like, two little muscles are pushing. But there's no resistance. And so when there's no resistance, the muscle is not caused to tear down so that it can expand. All of those criminals that I talked about and all those people doing all those things are requiring those of us who see the truth of who and what they are to expand, to not know them as criminal. Because we've got 5 gentlemen who have been recently very much the attention of the criminal justice system, who are thrown away for much of their lives, not because they actually did a thing, but because people said they did a thing. So now the exonerated 5 are continuing to bring attention to the challenges that we have in our government and in our criminal justice system, specifically because we're not investigating anymore. That's really the cause. It's really at the root of it. Because as soon as something negative or that we would label as negative has happened, we start addressing the thing that happened and not the root cause. The root cause of people doing things is a whole other thing. And parents, it comes back to the lack of tools that you were given. Not because of what you did, but parents have just not been given what they need in order to be the best parent. And now we can do that. Now you can look around at some of the young people that are parenting, and you can not only share the wisdom that you've learned, but there are a lot of people that are raising children without wise grandparents and wise parents around them. That's why you have generational poverty. But we come to a community like this, and again, come to Soul Center, be open, be available, right? For the message, the divine message for you in all of this that I'm saying. Law-aligning citizens call into the prayer line like they called into the radio show, and they let it be known what they're calling forth into their lives. They allow people like Sharon to hold the space around them and speak a word for them. They allow people to hold and anchor the space around you because it's not an expectation that you should know how to do this. But the opportunity is that the information is now available to you. The information is available to you to be a better friend, a better brother, a better sister, a better mother, a better daughter, a better son. Even if your parents are on the other side, you can still reconcile your sonship, your daughtership with the parent that's on the other side. Even if you have a child that's on the other side, you can reconcile your motherhood and your fatherhood. None of this stuff is limited by this life because of this last thing that I want to tell you. There's a teaching that says, as above, so below. Every idea that you have about heaven, everything that you have, every idea that you have about eternity is true now. If you will allow yourself to live right now, as if heaven is here, right here in Orange County, that heaven is right down there on Skid Row, that heaven is right over there in India, in Bangladesh, that heaven is right down there in Nicaragua, that heaven is right there in South Africa, that if you will recognize that heaven is everywhere, heaven being that infinite potential, the full realization of all of the loving potential of the universe, that it's here now. Imagine what this world would be like. And you get to, right here in this moment, to take it. It's yours. It's yours. Take it with you right now. Take it. Yeah. How many of you are willing to take it? Yeah. I just want you to extend your arms up in the air like this. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to spiritually gossip about yourself. Some of us have gossiped before. But we're going to spiritually gossip about ourselves as we close out this morning. And so we start with this phrase. Everyone just say, I am. I am. All right? Now I want you to drop in the quality of the divine that you are. So if you're joy, say, I am joy. I am joy. If you're love, say, I am love. I am love. If you're genius and you're creative, say, I am creative genius. I am creative genius. If you're great wife or a great friend or a great sister, say that. I'm a great friend. I'm a great partner. I'm a great sister. I'm a great giver. If you are a generous person, say that I'm a generous person. And then just wrap your arms around yourself and seal it. As you wrap your arms around yourself and you just close your eyes, I'm declaring the truth about your life and our lives right now. So grateful for life, so grateful for love, so grateful for abundance, so grateful for beauty, so grateful for the infinite potential of the love intelligence that is governing the universe, that infinite present, to know it as my life and the life of each person here. I'm sealing into this field, into each life here, wholeness, abundance, peace, beauty, love, light, illumination, divine intelligence, divine creativity, ingenuity, power. We're standing in our spiritual authority, knowing this is the reality of our life as law-aligning citizens. As we align ourselves with the true power, the true authority of this world, we know that we cannot be rejected. We know that nothing can align us with something other than love, light, joy, beauty, peace, because we amplify it today in a greater way than ever before. This is what we know. This is what we give thanks for. And we simply celebrate and declare by saying, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Let me hear you celebrate it. It's the truth about your life. How about that? Is that good? Thank you so much for showing up today. It's time for our offering. It's time for our opportunity of giving. So one of the laws that governs the universe that we talk about, it talks about sowing and reaping. We talk about it in terms of seeds all the time. And then we also talk about the law of circulation. We talk about the things that we are calling forth in our lives and there are ways to activate that. And so I invite you right now to participate in that with our offering. So right now is our time of giving. I want you to think about what you want in your life. If it's a financial idea that you want, more abundance, a better job, I want you to give in such a way that it aligns with that which you're calling forth in your life. If it's more love, if it's more peace, if it's more beauty, if it's more of any of these things, I want you to invest in soul centers, sow your seeds into this fertile ground of this community, that it will produce in alignment with that which we are calling forth in your life. Yes?
Yes.
And if you're not used to preparing in this way, I'm excited because now you're going to get used to it. Now you're going to move into another level. So even if the basket passes you and you are prepared, I'm going to ask you to pour a blessing into the basket for Soul Center, knowing that from your heart you are truly giving. Yes?
Yes.
All right, go for it.